Holocaust Memorial Day is on the 27th of January. This year's theme is ordinary people, reminding us that genocide happens because of ordinary people. Ordinary people who turn a blind eye. Ordinary people who believe propaganda. Ordinary people who join murderous regimes. Those who are persecuted, oppressed and murdered in genocide aren't treated this way because of crimes they've committed. It's because they are ordinary people who belong to a particular group. As we remember those victims, we look at how ordinary people still suffer to this day at the hands of hate crime. Carol Burt is from I Am Me Scotland, an organisation she created to help tackle disability hate crime. She tells us now what a hate crime is.
A hate crime is where someone's targeted because they are or are perceived to have a disability, or they're targeted because of their race, their religion, their sexual orientation or their transgender identity.
Carol set up I Am Me Scotland because she felt she had to do something to make a difference.
I started the charity back in 2012. It was actually after watching a TV programme called Don't Hate Us. It was about a young adult called Gemma Hayter who had a disability, and she was targeted by young people within her community. They exploited her, they used her flat, they pretended to be her friends, and the abuse escalated into the death of Gemma. It was one of the programmes that you watched and were really upset but then couldn't forget about, and we decided to do some research within the local community to find out if disability hate crime was in fact an actual thing, and what we could do to help target it.
Ordinary people in Scotland can be targeted because of their disability, race or ethnicity, religion or belief, transgender identity or sexual orientation. Hate crime has a serious impact on all of its victims.
So sometimes people might be scared to do the things that we take for granted, so going shopping, going to the gym, even travelling into work or picking their children up from school, because they have been targeted before and that can impact on their future behaviour.
Saeed was recently abused just because of his faith.
There were two girls at a club I volunteered at. They always make comments, but I didn't know they meant me by it. But one day, they started to say real bad things about my religion and called me a Muslim terrorist. They threw stuff at me and broke my bike. I was already really struggling with my mental health, but it made things really worse.
With the great work of organisations like I Am Me Scotland, we've made strides in the last decade and helped to make this country a safer and fairer place for all. But the work must continue. When a hate crime is committed, the most important thing is to make sure you are safe. In an emergency, always call 999. Then the focus should be on speaking up.
It's important that you do report it. There's lots of different ways you can do that. You can speak to a police officer directly. You can report it through the app, the Keep Safe Scotland app. You can report it online on the Police Scotland website, or you can go into a third-party reporting centre. So a third-party reporting centre are places out in the community like libraries or council buildings or some community buildings, and they're places where staff should be trained to take a hate crime report for you so that you don't have to speak to a police officer.
Nothing can be done if you don't speak up. Not all experiences of prejudice might be considered a hate crime, but the impact of prejudice-based bullying can be just as devastating for individuals. Carol from I Am Me Scotland talks about the thin grey line between the two.
Quite often, hate incidents and prejudice-based bullying are very, very similar behaviours. It's where somebody's targeted because of who they are or who they're perceived to be. An incident may happen in school that's perceived as bullying, and that same incident may happen out in the community that's classed as a hate incident. If there's a crime being committed, that's when it could potentially be a hate crime. And that's if there's been a crime committed and the person's been targeted because of their religion, race, disability, sexual orientation or transgender identity. And that then becomes a crime with an aggravator of hate. So what that actually means is it should be dealt with more severely by the time it gets through the criminal justice system. Quite a lot of the people that we speak to, the incidents begin in school, usually name calling. It becomes unchallenged, it becomes acceptable. That person's then targeted throughout their school, throughout their early career, and it leads on, and the impact that it has is huge, it's severe. Quite often adults will come up to us and say that some of the stuff we were talking about was potentially triggering back to as a childhood when they were targeted because of their dyslexia or autism, ADHD, conditions that weren't spoken about years ago that are becoming much more acceptable because of education, because people are speaking about it more and understand a bit more about the conditions.
To make further improvements, it seems like a great idea to promote safety and fairness in schools. One such project is MVP, Mentors in Violence Prevention, where senior pupils encourage younger members of the school community to be aware of how to be active bystanders when faced with issues like prejudice and violence. Lucy is a mentor at Graham High School in Falkirk.
We do sessions every term, 2 S1s and S2s. 2 sessions I've done have been homophobia and transphobia. I have an S2 class and we kind of ask them questions on, is this common? Is this something you hear a lot? Do you think that this would hurt this particular person? Maybe would you feel guilty if you didn't stand up? And we focus a lot on bystanders and what they would do if they were in a scenario where they saw something happening. And our motto is silence is violence.
Lucy hopes she can prevent other pupils from going through what she experienced.
When I was 14, I made the discovery that I was bisexual, which was something that I knew a bit about, because I knew about the community and things, but bisexuality as its own thing, I didn't know a lot about. So I know there's a lot of stereotypes around bisexuality, that they're like greedy and that they're just want attention, or they need to make a decision. Like, you have a lot of people telling you like what you like, which is not a decision they should be making. It's your life, it's who you're attracted to. When I came out, I started talking to this girl that I liked, and she was lesbian, and when I told her I was bisexual, she kind of had a hostile reaction. So she basically told me that I was, lying to myself, and that I had to pick whether I was lesbian and straight and stop wasting her time. When you look so much into the community as somewhere where you can console in, you get that sort of reaction. You're like, oh, who do I go to talk to?
Just like Lucy, Casey is an MVP mentor.
Growing up, I've always been quite feminine. I've never been scared to show that or express myself. My family have always, growing up, have always told me just be myself, never change for anyone, which obviously I'm so grateful for. I always used to play with dolls, and I used to love dresses and all this stuff. Obviously, when you're a young person, you don't really think about what other people can think. Maybe going to buy a doll or something. My dad was buying me dolls. Maybe some of the cashiers would be like, oh, is that for your sister? And I would always think no, it's for me. But obviously, being young, I didn't really understand it's not something that's common. It's like a little boy going in to buy a doll, whereas it should be. When I was growing up and going into high school and stuff, being feminine, it's really a lot of assumptions get thrown at you, a lot of words get thrown at you, and it's hard to handle, I think.
Casey's resistance was strong because he had the support of a friend, showing the importance of being an active bystander.
My best friend, her name's Alyssa, she was always there to support me. So in my first year of high school, obviously, I would be walking around the corridors and people would be talking about me or saying stuff behind my back, and Alyssa would always be trying to distract me. She would always start new conversations and questions to get me to not focus on these things. And I think obviously that was a major thing I'm so grateful for, because who would know what I would be if it wasn't for her? Would I still be as open as I am now? I don't actually know. So I wouldn't say I really felt fear, but I more felt quite uneasy.
Elise became a mentor for MVP after being targeted for a medical condition.
I'm type 1 diabetic, so when I was younger, I was treated differently for being diabetic, especially a lot of people get type 1 and type 2 diabetes mixed up. So type 2 diabetes is where you develop it through poor diet and lack of exercise, whereas type 1's through genetics. So I'll have type 1 for the rest of my life. but I've always just kind of been treated differently. Like, I remember in like primary 6, one of my friends had a chocolate making birthday party and didn't invite me simply just because I was diabetic. We were in Calendar Park during the summer, and I'd ran off and my mum couldn't find me, and she found me in a bush checking my sugars simply just because I didn't want other people to see me, because I didn't think they would understand. Especially when I was younger, I didn't want to talk about it. So, and like kids my age, they didn't understand. So they would like ask questions, or like, what are you doing? Like, just nipping at me as if like, what are you, like, I don't understand what you're doing. And I didn't feel like talking about it when I was younger, because I wanted to hide that part of myself.
Elise wasn't just treated differently by fellow pupils.
I wear an insulin pump. I've got kind of wires and different things connected to me to help me stay alive, obviously, and get me my insulin and things that I need. And in second year, I fell out with one of my friends, and her dad called me a robot, simply just because of the wires and things that I've got. It definitely upset me, and it was hurtful. If an adult that like I trusted was going to say something like that about me, it impacted like me, the way that I trust adults.
Elise, Casey and Lucy are continuing the fine work that organisations are doing in Scotland to tackle hate crime and prejudice-based bullying.
Be more open to more than what you understand. Because just because you don't understand something doesn't mean it's not there, and doesn't mean you can't learn about it.
If you see someone like in schools getting bullied or anything, stick up for them. Well, obviously if they're in the right or anything, like make sure you stick up for them. Reassure them like you'll be fine, don't worry about it, and support them, because it's always good to have a bit of support no matter what the situation is.
It's definitely something that people need to be educated on, because people like just assume that I'm diabetic because I ate a lot of sugar growing up, or I didn't do a lot of exercise. So I get called kind of fat a lot because of that. I don't think that people recognise it as prejudice, but it would be useful to kind of have people educated on it, because obviously it affected me growing up.
Times are definitely changing. I think it's getting a lot better. Scotland was the first to teach about like LGBT and like all this stuff. So I think it's definitely improving. I do think there's still a lot to work on, but there's always room for improvements. So I think we're getting there.
If you're a victim or a witness, firstly, make sure you are safe. Then report it. Carol from I Am Me Scotland tells us why this is important.
If you don't report that, the police won't know that those incidents are happening, and they can't then deal with that kind of behaviour. When we were doing the initial research into whether hate crime, disability hate crime in particular, was a thing, everybody we had spoken to, not one person had reported it, and that's because we'd been brought up in an environment of sticks and stones will break your bones, just don't travel on that bus, just don't go out at that time. So people were being encouraged to change their behaviour, whereas actually what we should be doing is reporting everything.
If you have been affected by hate crime, please talk to a trusted adult, the police, or visit a third-party reporting centre. You can also use the I Am Me Keep Safe app. Visit fearless.org to learn more.